Welcome to the Fitgenes podcast with Dr. Sam Shay, DC, functional medicine certified professional and Fitgenes certified practitioner. Your genes are your most powerful blueprint. It holds the story of how your body truly works. This show is here for one reason: to decode your DNA, making genetics practical, guiding you towards your best nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle choices. Whether you're a health seeker, a lifelong learner, a practitioner, or a health coach ready to go deeper, this is your place to make sense of genetics. Together, we'll cut through the noise, turn data into insight, and help you communicate with confidence so you can create real change in yourself and in those you support. Each episode breaks down complex genetics into clear, usable frameworks you can actually apply. So stop guessing, start decoding, and let's dive into today's episode.
All right, welcome back to the show. We're here with Dr. Sam Shay, DC, FMCP, genetics expert and international Fitgenes educator and trainer. I'm your co-host, Mikayla Wachsmann, master's in human nutrition and functional medicine, board-certified clinical nutrition specialist, and former mentee of Dr. Sam. Today, we're diving into inflammation. Dr. Sam, why are we talking about inflammation from a genetics point of view?
It's a great question. So inflammation is one of the most important processes that influences all of our health and well-being for the short and the long term. Inflammation is a very big word that's thrown around a lot in whether it's podcasts or magazines, television shows, blog posts, books, whatever discussions, whatever conferences it might be. Inflammation is one of the oldest and most important processes in the entire human body. And when we talk about inflammation, it's typically talked about in negative terms. And the reality is that in order to properly understand genetically, we have to understand inflammation historically from an evolutionary biology standpoint. That once we get the purpose of inflammation, then we can understand why it can careen into some negative outcomes, and also understand why it's still around and why people like me who are genetically hyper-inflammatory, why that might be beneficial in different environments, particularly hunter-gatherer environments. Yeah. So what I'm not going to do is rag on inflammation, nor am I going to exalt it. I'm just going to talk about it in its proper terms. And inflammation at its core, the main purpose was to fight off infections and repair from injuries. That if I'm a hunter-gatherer and I'm out there with a band of hunting party members and we're trying to take down an animal 20 times our body weight and all we have are tiny sticks, it's very likely that one or more of us are going to get bit, mauled, gored, trampled, bucked, whatever. And if I'm hyper-inflammatory, which I am, if I'm genetically more prone for a stronger, faster repair inflammatory response, and I get a bite wound on my arm, what is a bite wound? It's tissue damage combined with whatever infections have been introduced from the bite. Inflammation will rush in there to bring white blood cells to kill the infection, and will also bring in red blood cells and other mechanisms to clear out the debris and repair the tissue. So if I'm
keep you alive,
correct, in the short term. So if I'm hyper-inflammatory, I will survive that bite wound much better than my less inflammatory prone hunting party member next to me who got the exact same bite wound. But with evolutionary biology, it's all about trade-offs. So if I'm a hyper-inflamer, I will survive better from short-term injury, but I will struggle in the long term with chronic illness.
Which brings us to present day.
Correct. So the person who's less inflammatory prone would have a different set of trade-offs back in hunter-gatherer times, and be less likely to survive in the short term from acute injuries, but more likely to thrive in the long term. Fast forward to today, being hyper-inflammatory is not an asset anymore, because even though acute injuries do exist, the level of the sheer number of acute injuries compared to what hunter-gatherers endured is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. I remember when I took human skeletal anatomy in college,
Mm-hmm.
my instructor, Professor Allison Galloway, she was a forensic expert, and she she taught us by having a horror story for every bone in the body.
Oh, I'm sure.
It worked.
Yeah.
Ironically, the day before one of the quizzes was Halloween, and I'm up there in the bone lab, and I'm looking like, studying, bone, actual human bones, and I'm thinking to myself, am I celebrating Halloween? This is not what I imagined.
No.
There's distinct lack of candy around this bone lab. Anyway,
Yeah.
so when there was an article that showed when they exhumed some hunter-gatherer skeletons, and they compared the number of injuries that were in the skeletons, not even the soft tissue, because soft tissue is all rotted away.
Right.
Like what would you see from the what you saw? It was that the number of injuries in a hunter-gatherer in the skeletons exceeded those in a professional football player.
Wow. Which makes sense because we're living in houses and we have a lot more structure to our day-to-day and all the things.
So when we look at inflammation today, people who are hyper-inflammatory, they're at a massive disadvantage because there's so many things that are hyper-inflammatory, but nothing to show for it. We're not out there killing 2,000-pound animals or whatever.
No, yeah.
And now we're also under this hyper-inflammatory soup, this environmental insults that we're surrounded by, whether it's pollution in the air or foods that are
personal care products.
Yeah. The processed foods. Sleep deprivation will create inflammation chronically, simply because in sleep is when we remove most of the inflammation, or a huge chunk of it.
People are not sleeping well.
Correct. And then we've got, artificial lights. We've got high stress. We have the stress from all sorts of arenas, from the constant barrage of news to doom scrolling to just
so many things.
So many different things. And we're just under an entire constant barrage of inflammatory insults. And so if you're hyper-inflammatory, you don't actually have an advantage anymore.
Yeah.
Because the circumstances where you would basically don't really exist
anymore.
as comparatively.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people who are in dangerous situations, or people who play sports or in violent situations, or accidents do happen, but
it's very different.
It's very different.
Yeah. Do you have, you do have some personal history around inflammation and your own journey that you could share with us to contextualize more of today and what somebody else might be experiencing in relation to what you've experienced?
Sure.
With this?
So we'll talk about physical injuries. The issue with inflammation is when it becomes chronic.
And can you define that?
Sure. So if you're wanting to, a good analogy is that if I've visited New York City a bunch. My grandparents live there. And when you're in New York City, there's buildings that are under repair. But there's lots of scaffolding all around it. And so it kind of makes it difficult to navigate that. So inflammation is there to repair. But the problem is that
and inflammation is similar to the scaffolding.
The inflammation process is the scaffolding. It's you're swelling.
Yeah.
Even then you can say like you're swelling, like the building is swelling in air quotes with the scaffolding.
Sure.
And then things are repairing using that swelling as even swelling, you can structurally splint an area so you don't move it and further damage it.
Right.
So the problem would be if that scaffolding kept expanding, and no one ever took it down, and it was just there and continued to grow, and it never went away. That would make it would overshoot its intention and stay beyond its purpose.
Yeah.
That's when it becomes a problem. Now it's hindering the function of the building in the long term, making it very difficult to use, even though the intention was there to try to repair it in the short term. So
chronic, it could be 5+ years, 3+ years? Is there a certain amount of time in which it would
it
be
really
deemed?
depends on the scope of the injury. So if like someone's got a splinter and if someone's got a splinter and then you take the splinter out, but the inflammation of the splinter lasts for 10 days, like that would be like chronic relative to the
actual injury
versus if they're healing from a broken leg. And then they're stabilized and all these other, like the inflammation may take a lot longer. And then at what point it crosses into chronic inflammation, not too sure on the timeline on that. But I think different inflammatory processes would have different timelines.
Okay.
And an example that I dealt with was that I had chronic debilitating joint pain across all my fingers. And
you were young. I
was in my mid-30s.
Yeah.
And I had pain in my hands like an 80-year-old man. And this is when and then this is the exact time when I was taking the genetics tests and I was like worried about what's going on, why I'm in so much pain. Additionally, I struggled with chronic illness my whole life, starting from when I was age 6. I had chronic illness right from the beginning. And the chronic inflammation for me was I was just deeply unwell
for many years,
just weak and distressed and had really bad, embarrassing gut problems, chronic pain, insomnia, anxiety, depression.
And so these can all be symptoms of underlying inflammation that is not being addressed or perpetuating.
Chronic inflammation, if it gets to your frontal lobes, means that your frontal lobes aren't working fully. And one of the main functions of the frontal lobes is to inhibit or relax the limbic centers or the emotional centers of the brain. So if you don't have good frontal lobe function, you're more reactive, more emotionally wound up.
Charged. Which I know a lot of people want to have a more stable mood, at least a lot of the clients I talk to.
Yeah.
And so it's maybe not even something they're thinking about with regards to inflammation being a perpetuator or cause of that.
Yeah, brain inflammation is a big issue. I mean, I went to a conference in 2017 in Australia where the entire conference was on the gut-brain axis, and they talked about connections to mood, inflammation in the gut, creating inflammation in the brain, inflammation in the gut, creating this kind of porousness or intestinal permeability, what's colloquially called leaky gut, that then created all these conditions for immune responses, which then can create autoimmunity, and then even opportunities for certain proteins to kind of literally crawl up the vagus nerve to implant in the brain. And
it might freak some people out.
Well, it freaked me out. And you're talking about where does Parkinson's begin? And they said that Parkinson's actually can begin in the gut, and that the proteins you see associated with Parkinson's actually show up in the gut first, and then they show up in the brain, and then the ladder to the brain is via the vagus nerve. And you see constipation in Parkinson's. People who suffer with Parkinson's years before they actually have Parkinson's in the brain. They're basically having stasis of movement in the gut before it gets up and controls the neurons inside coming down from the brain. So this is a long way of saying that inflammation, you can basically draw a relatively straight line from chronic inflammation to nearly any chronic disease we know of.
So this is really important for us to dive into and really talk about from the genetics lens, which makes sense.
Yeah, if you know, the reason why this is practical is that if you know your relationship to inflammation as such, we're not chasing a specific gene of inflammation. That's not what we're doing. We're looking at the cluster of the most important genes that control inflammation. And there are hundreds of genes that directly influence or indirectly influence inflammation. But what we're focused on is like the top 15, 16 of those genes, the ones that control the ones under the slew of inflammatory genes underneath them.
Yeah. And can you just touch on how we got to those top 15 or 16, or how Fitgenes came up with those?
Good question. So what happened was that Dr. Beaver, who is the co-founder and chief science officer of Fitgenes, back years ago, what happened was that both of his parents were diagnosed with cancer. And so he switched his PhD genius in engineering over to genetics, which is actually to his credit, because he came at genetics from an engineering mind, and he read over 5,000 genetics papers. And what he determined was that there were 7 major drivers of chronic disease, including cancer. Just to be clear, this is not a genetics test for cancer. We're not checking for the cancer gene. We're not checking for the heart disease gene. We're not checking for the dementia gene, the stroke gene. We're not this is not a disease-based genetics test. What we're looking at is the drivers. And so he identified 7 major drivers that then influence and provoke the quote unquote disease genes downstream. And he found the number one provoker, the top driver of the 7 drivers, was inflammation.
Wow.
And then, so that was the first priority, was figuring out what are the 7 drivers, and inflammation happens to be the number one driver. Then the second priority was that which of the genes that influence the drivers, of the genes that are in each category, like the inflammatory genes, which are the genes that are the most important, the generals that control the foot soldiers. And that's where he came up with these 15, now 16 genes. I mean, he added, there was a third COX gene that he added to it.
And I'm sure, right, like as any genetics company, they're going to continue to evolve and adapt as we get more research.
As more information goes in.
Yeah.
So there's those top 15, 16 genes. The reason I say 15, 16 is that in Australasia, the genetics.
Lily's in a great spot here. She's getting
Lily's
some nice pets.
Lily's having a spa day. Okay.
Yeah.
In Australasia, there's 15 genes on the machine that's tested over there, 15 inflammatory, whereas here in the Western Hemisphere, we've got the 16th gene. Does it make that much of a difference, the 15th, 16th gene? Not really. So it's fine.
Like we're looking at clusters.
Clusters, yeah. We're not dependent on a single gene here. So so we've got the first priority is the drivers of which one of the most important is inflammation. Then we've got the next priority is the generals versus the foot soldiers. And then the third priority is, of the remaining genes, which ones have at least 10% variation in the general population. So we're looking at genes that are going to likely show up on a genetics test. We're not checking for some super obscure inflammatory gene that's like 0.0001% probability. It's important to that person who has it,
of course.
But we're focused on genes that are pretty applicable to
majority
of
people. Yeah. And can you get
then the fourth? I'll get to the specifics of the genes in a second. So then the fourth criteria is, of those genes, which ones have peer-reviewed scientific journal articles and top journals that show that lifestyle, diet, nutrition alone beneficially influences the genes to behave better, to behave more what we'll call green-like. Because if you've got 2 copies of the good gene, two good versions or more beneficial versions of the inflammatory genes.
And can you actually just touch on that? Just give us a little run around of the basics of what we're looking at, because we use a red, green, yellow dot system. And just for our new listeners or anybody who needs a refresh.
Genetic reports are powerful, but only if you can actually interpret them and your clients can really understand what to do and in what priority. If you're a health coach, clinician, or practitioner who feels buried in genetics pathways, complex list of SNPs, and jargon that never seems to end, you're not alone. At Fitgenesusa.com, we make genetics understandable and actionable. Fitgenesusa.com distills the complexity of genetics into practical frameworks that you can use the same day. Faster interpretation, clearer communication, and better outcomes, without spending hours lost in the weeds. Whether you're supporting weight loss, optimizing diet, hormone balance, digestion, inflammation, or getting to the underlying cause of chronic issues, genetic clarity can change everything. Fitgenesusa.com also provides a unique genetic carb tolerance report to help determine whether your clients are better suited to a keto or paleo or Mediterranean or higher carb style diet. Make your practice stand out with this unique report. Save time and energy with clear, easy-to-read reports and upgrade your practice with precision genetics testing.
Start now at fitgenesusa.com.
So green is, you've got a most beneficial version of the gene from both mom and dad. The technical term is homozygous wild type. The yellow means you got one beneficial version from mom or dad and one version that was not beneficial from either mom or dad. And that's what we call yellow or heterozygous.
Okay.
And then the red dot, or what's called homozygous variant, that's when you got two copies of the least beneficial version, or the quote bad version of the gene. Now it's bad in air quotes based on modern function.
Yeah.
So when we are talking about today, being hyper-inflammatory is distinctly bad.
Yeah.
As opposed to back in hunter-gatherer times where
it was
just a trade-off.
Yeah.
It was not good or bad. It was just you were just doing one set of trade-offs for the other.
Yeah.
Short-term versus long-term viability.
Yeah.
So the designations of red, yellow, green are based on function, not necessarily on just what is the actual genetic
what is the
variant.
pair. Yeah. And what are the specific genes that we're talking about for inflammation in this particular episode?
Yeah, so the main genes that shift you over just a tiny bit.
It's her show.
It's definitely
for anybody who's not watching. Lily's just getting comfortable.
Yeah, Lily. Hi, Lily, sweetie. Okay, so the main genes that we're looking at are there's the interleukin 1s, specifically interleukin 1 alpha-1, interleukin 1 alpha-2, and interleukin 1 beta. Then there's interleukin 6, which is very famous in the genetics world, and then its other famous sibling in TNF alpha.
Okay.
Probably TNF alpha and interleukin 6 are the most famous of these inflammatory genes in general. But then we've got interleukin 8, interleukin 18, the CRP genes, and then the COX genes, COX. There's 3 CRP genes, CRP1-1, -2, and -3. And then the cyclooxygenase genes are -2, -3, -2, -1, and then -2, -4 for the super nerds out there.
Okay.
And then the last cluster are 3 interleukin 10 genes, interleukin 10, -1, -2, and -3. So the way to think about them is that you can break up the process of inflammation into 3 components. Initiation, propagation, and extinguishing. Meaning you've got clusters of genes that are involved with the spark of inflammation. Then you've got clusters of genes that are going to basically dictate, is this inflammation just going to be a little campfire? Is it going to blaze into a bonfire?
Yeah.
And then you've got extinguishing, which is interleukin 10, which is like, do you have a fire truck on patrol, a fire extinguisher, or a squirt gun to try to put out a
I have a squirt gun.
Yeah. I've got 2 out of the 3 for me are squirt guns.
Yeah.
That's 1 out of 3 for me.
Yeah. And this is on the report. It's a beautiful, page that displays your overall inflammatory pattern, right? And you can have, green, yellow, red dots for, whatever the person might be. But mine is, I don't initiate super easy, but once I initiate it is like a wildfire, and then it's super slow to go away, which I identify with 100% in my day to day.
Right.
So
yeah, you can, and when people get their reports, you can actually predict their relationship to inflammation based on their patterning. So some people are very good at blocking inflammation from starting, like they're a green dot in the initiation
which
genes.
is me.
But they can be like a red dot in propagation and a red or yellow dot in extinguishing. So once you have an inflammatory process that crosses that threshold into inflammation, it just goes kaboom.
Yeah.
And then it's really hard to come back to baseline. Other people, they can have different versions where they're really bad at preventing inflammation, but they've got a green dot in propagation. So it's more like an ongoing annoyance as opposed to a big event. And then if they've got really a green dot in their, collectively in their interleukin 10s for extinguishing, then they can just like they have an inflammatory thing that kind of trivially just happens a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not really too invasive,
Mm-hmm.
but then it can go away quickly. Or if it's not a green dot in extinguishing, then it's just kind of hang out for a long time.
Yeah. I'm
So-
envious of anybody who has a green dot for extinguishing.
Well, yeah, it's all people suffer in different ways. Like people
Yeah.
who've got green dots in extinguishing, but they have, red or yellow dots amongst initiation and propagation.
Mhm.
It's like they have lots of inflammation and it goes away. It's like this constant yo-yoing that's going on.
Yeah.
And so when we look at the clusters, just the rough way you can categorize the genes in terms of their clusters
Mm-hmm.
are the interleukin 1s, interleukin 6, and TNF alpha. They're more in the initiation.
Okay.
And
so when you classify the dot, or when we have that on a report, it's the cluster average, or there's not average. I didn't mean to say average, but it's the cluster of those genes.
It's the weighted. Well, if you're looking at, there's on the report, and we're looking at 16 genes, and we're trying. One of the ways that we're trying to make it easy for both the public to understand and
Mhm.
for practitioners to interpret and explain
Mm-hmm.
is that if you have 16 genes and someone is like, of those 16 genes, how do you describe it to someone? Like,
Mhm.
what is your relation to inflammation as such?
Mhm.
And just from clinical observation,
Mm-hmm.
is that people who've got 6 or fewer of these 16 pro-inflammatory genes,
Mm-hmm.
they're best understood as they're a green dot overall in their relationship to inflammation.
Initiating specifically?
No, just,
Or just
any
overall? Okay.
overall, basically any 6. If it's 6 or less, 6 or fewer, they're just a green dot overall. They're just less inflammatory prone. Simply because I've never seen anyone who has greens across all 16. That has literally never happened in my 10 plus years.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that.
So I've seen that people between about 6 or fewer,
Mm-hmm.
they're basically a green dot overall.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you divide them up into 3 different categories, initiation, propagation, extinguishing, they can have different clusterings.
Like so the dot color could be different.
Well, but the weighted average between the 3 would then come out to, in general, being more green-like overall.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's people who've got between about 7 to 11 of these pro-inflammatory genes as red or yellow dots. They're more a yellow dot overall as such in their relationship to inflammation. And then people 12 and above, like me, I've got 14 of them. There were red dots in our relationship to inflammation as such. Now, how is that practical? It's basically a quick way to educate, says Mr. Jones, based on your genetics report, you appear to be genetically more of a hyper-inflamer. What does that mean? It means that you're more at risk for being chronically inflamed, even from more trivial inputs. And there's so many things that create inflammation these days. What that means is that we have to create a personal lifestyle, diet, nutrition, exercise, and very importantly, recovery plan for your exercise, lifestyle plan, that you live as an anti-inflammatory life as possible, because your genes are mismatched for the modern day hyper-inflammatory environment. Your genes would be optimized to be a hunter-gatherer, where you could heal quickly from injuries from hunting animals. But they're not optimized for today. It doesn't mean your genes are bad. They're just mismatched for the wrong environment.
And here's your plan.
And so now we need to make a plan. And this is just your genetic reality. And this is a point where I would, because I myself am a hyper-inflamer. So look, you're in good company. I'm a hyper-inflamer too. Here's what happened for me when going back to the original question of my personal thing. I was having chronic joint pain across all my fingers, like an 80-year-old man. I was very worried. Then I ran my genetics test, saw I was a hyper-inflamer, and realized now I have an entire new list of things to do.
And probably things to not do.
And things to not do. Absolutely. That I didn't know were even a thing to help regulate my genetic relationship to inflammation as a whole. And like, and at that time I was doing other functional tests. I was in practice.
Yeah,
I was doing,
you were in this health space.
I was in doing
Yeah.
functional medicine. I was practicing acupuncture. I was doing chiropractic. I was doing functional neurology, but I was still having all of this joint pain. And then when I learned from genetics were concepts like nutrigenomics and these other principles that I'm affecting things more at the gene level as opposed to the nutritional level. Long story short, I implemented the recommendations from my genetics that I did not get that information from other functional tests that I had done, and I'd done a lot. And within a couple months, all my joint pain went away, and it's still gone over 10 years later.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. And the other pieces that came out of it is that I learned how to navigate my hyper-inflammatory response. And now I live a much more anti-inflammatory lifestyle,
aligned with your genetics,
aligned with my genetics.
Yeah.
And so my I became more healthy in my late 30s than I ever was in my 20s or my teens or whenever. So inflammation is such a powerful influence, particularly for people that have struggled or are concerned about chronic illness, or their mood or their digestion or whatever it might be, that knowing your genetic reality or inflammation can be such a boon. And then you have this whole other swath of tools that are available to you.
Great. I love that. And obviously we're going to continue elaborating on this topic of inflammation. We have a multi-series on this topic because there's so much depth to it and so much to cover. So, Dr. Sam, you've done a great job at sharing your relationship with inflammation and your genetics. And I think that really helped me, right, and other providers, and hopefully people listening who are not providers as well, just understand this relationship better and kind of give us that initial taste of what we're going to continue to dive into. So with that, is there any final thoughts or last bits that you want to share with us for this first episode on inflammation?
Yeah. If you've been struggling with stubborn weight, low energy, inflammation, tried every diet, or just feeling off no matter what you try, there's a reason. Your body isn't broken, you've just never seen the map. The Fitgenes genetic blueprint and the Carb Choice Advanced Profiles give you clear, personalized roadmaps for your health based entirely on your unique genetics. This isn't another diet, it's not guesswork, it's not a one-size-fits-all plan. With one simple cheek swab, you finally learn how your body is genetically predisposed to burn fat, handle carbs, detox, manage inflammation, balance hormones, recover from stress, and optimize energy. Instead of forcing your body into plans that don't work, you get a nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, and supplement strategy built precisely for your body, so you can feel more energy, drop inflammation, optimize your body shape, and feel amazing. To find the nearest Fitgenes practitioner near you, go to Fitgenesusa.com. That's Fitgenesusa.com.
The way to understand inflammation, from those three parts, is that you've got the first cluster for initiation, the second cluster for propagation, and the third cluster is the interleukin 10s. That's the fire. That's the putting out the fire. A fire engine if it's green, fire extinguisher if it's yellow, and squirt gun if it's red. And the when we're looking at what to do practically, so the one of the main insights from that was developed by Dr. Bieber and then for this Fitgenes test was that once you figure out the most important genes that are going to be showing up that are the upstream controllers that have peer review research done on humans on what to do to help make them behave more green-like, is that now you can look at what are the fewest number of interventions that can then beneficially...
People's ears are perking up.
Right. The fewest number of interventions...
Prioritization.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's like you test 140 genes and you now have 140 health tips.
Yeah,
that's not practical.
No. For anyone, even those who have a lot of time on their hands.
Totally.
It's not.
I spend my whole morning to prepare for the morning. Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
A 27
Yeah.
27 step morning routine
Yep.
boot up sequence.
Yeah.
Instead, like I'm interested in knowing if I have, 14 out of the 16 inflammatory genes as red or yellow dots. I want to know what's the one intervention that could help 10 of those 14.
Yeah. Or the most.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then I want to then check what are the other interventions that can help 11 out of those 14 or 7 or 8 or 9, and then combine like the top 3 to 5 of those things. And now I'm getting at
majority of those.
The majority, and in different ways from multiple angles. And that's exactly how I was able to remove the joint pain across all my fingers for these past 10 years. And there's some things that are very common across the inflammatory genes that are uniquely supportive. So, for example, you've got a fish oil.
I was literally thinking, I'm like omega-3s. That's the first thing that I would think you would say.
Fish oil is now I want to be very. This is going to really illustrate the point on the difference between nutritional dosing and Nutrigenomic dosing.
These are not the same thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nutritional dosing is like, here's your gram of fish oil. Hooray.
Yeah.
And
like
the
all
one
the biohackers and like, books are like, fish oil, good. Take that.
They're good. They've now become more sophisticated since nutrigenomic information has shown up in the past 5 years or so. But back then, and like when I was, when I was going through graduate school, it was like your 1 gram of fish oil. But here's the problem. 1 gram is only throwing existing anti-inflammatory widgets into the existing machinery. But the research shows that over 2 grams combined EPA DHA isn't just widgets into the machinery. It actually changes the machinery. And that's...
And then we come with the dial or the dimmer switch analogy, which can you just touch on that?
Sure.
Real quick?
The dimmer switch is that if you're born with red, yellow, and green dots, what that means is that it's not locked into place as red, yellow, green. It's more like a dial where you've got the red, yellow, and green portion of the dial, but your dot is the default setting.
And so for inflammation, yours defaults majority. It's a red.
Yellows and reds, yeah.
Yeah. And so the 2 grams of fish oil as compared to the 1 that you were previously taking
will move the needle more towards the green.
Hypothetically.
Well, no, for me, it was practically like my joint pain went away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess I just mean that for people listening, your reds and your yellows and your greens, they won't ever be, green won't be a red and your red won't be a yellow ever.
Hard-coded as a gene.
Hard-coded, yes. But the expression of those genes, which is what, I'm obsessed with, what you're obsessed with, what we're talking about on this podcast. So amazing. Yeah.
So fish oil is one of the biggest levers. Now, when people are working to get fish oil, so you want to get it from really high quality source that they do extra checking for metals and quality and sourcing and all that. You can get the EPA DHA from foods, most commonly pasture raised egg yolks, pasture fed and finished ruminant animals that and their organ meats, like so the pasture fed and finished cattle or elk or bison or whatever, especially their organ meats, and the fats around them have a lot of those omegas in them. There are certain companies that can generate omega-3s from algae, though they're like super expensive. But if people are preferring to not engage in animal products,
right.
I mean, it's debatable whether algae is an animal or not, but that's neither here nor there.
But if someone feels, a little bit more ethical or something.
So, so you got fish oils as a major lever for the inflammatory genes. The other things are sulforaphane also can help.
We love sulforaphane.
Yes, we do. And now sulforaphane does a lot of double and triple duty because sulforaphane also engages in the other gene clusters that help support the drivers of that we mentioned earlier, most notably vitamin D receptors. That's a discussion for another time. But just sulforaphane is what I've seen is one of the most important levers for helping people with their genetics. And I predict that sulforaphane will be more important research-wise than turmeric in terms of controlling inflammation in the next 5
You heard
years
it here
so.
first.
Yeah. Sulforaphane is broccoli sprout, derived from broccoli sprout powder, and or broccoli sprouts. And yes, you can get it from broccoli sprouts, but there's, lots of different varieties of broccoli sprouts, and not all of them have the correct ratio of the substrate and enzyme called glucoraphanin and morasinase for the Scrabble enthusiasts out there.
Yeah, more. And if sulforaphane wasn't a great
Scrabble
great enough Scrabble word, yeah. And if I understand too, right, like glucoraphanin and morasinase, right? Morasinase, when you physically, manipulate it, they combine together, right? So if you chew or cut, and then that's how sulforaphane comes to be. So there's a lot of variability in the food source. So I think, I even grew, and I still have broccoli sprouts at home, but growing your own broccoli sprouts, great. It doesn't mean you're getting the nutrigenomic dosing of sulforaphane like we've been talking about.
Yeah, I feel like sulforaphane is one of those products that is ideally most done through supplementation, simply because it's just hard to navigate broccoli sprouts for most people, and it's hard to know if you're actually getting what you need. Other things include what are called SOD inducers, or superoxide dismutase inducers, and those are
more Scrabble words.
So we'll talk about more of those in the podcast where we go over quenching free radicals in the mitochondria and the three major genes that control that. So the major gene in the mitochondria is called MN-SOD, or manganese superoxide dismutase. And an SOD inducer is something that helps that enzyme express more, so you can actually quench more free radicals in the mitochondria. So there's a bunch of different things that stimulate SOD, but SOD inducers not only help these genes that quench free radicals in mitochondria, but they also help certain pro-inflammatory genes as well, the 16 that we mentioned. So things that are SOD inducers are, like things like zinc, magnesium. Sorry, not magnesium. Zinc, manganese. In fact, the MN in MN-SOD stands for manganese. Curcumin, carnitine, malic acid, CoQ10, and acetylcysteine. Also resveratrol, but I'm hesitant to mention it simply because the therapeutic dosage of resveratrol in the research that shows the nutrigenomic response is something like 150 to 200 milligrams, which is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And you can get your sulforaphane, your fish oil, and a bunch of other things for the same amount you'd spend on resveratrol. So I feel like resveratrol is like super overpriced.
Yeah.
Even though it's well studied and the longevity people are all excited about it.
Yeah.
But like, I'm more excited about what I can do with sulforaphane and fish oil and maybe one or two other things for the same amount I'd spend on resveratrol.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, it's all about priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Wonderful.
So you've got different nutritional strategies around inflammation. And then there's also, I know.
She's thoroughly engaged.
Getting vitamin D also helps reduce inflammation. Avoiding things that are explicitly pro-inflammatory, like avoiding smoking, minimizing pollution. Reducing body weight will also drop inflammation, because if you're overweight, reducing body weight, because what happens is that interleukin-6 can be generated from inflamed fat cells. And so it can create this kind of self-feeding loop. And there is a phenomenon in where you can see, like, of the reduced body weight of overweight, and there's like a whole bunch of genes that show up, and it'll help reduce inflammation if you're overweight. But people who feel like that's kind of gaslighty. Like, if someone's overweight and you're telling me it'll help with inflammation if you lose weight. Yeah, but part of me being overweight is that I'm inflamed and I'm retaining water. Like, so it seems very gaslighty to tell me that you should drop weight to drop inflammation when I'm having high inflammation, which is causing the weight.
It's like the chicken and the egg. Almost.
And the way to better understand that is that people who have a lot of pro-inflammatory genes and carry a lot of inflammatory water weight, which we'll go into much more detail in the next podcast, and how to address like the different mechanisms around inflammatory water weight. The thing to understand is that people who have a lot of genes that can create the inflammatory response and inflammatory water weight, these are the people that are that I see that are most at risk for rapidly putting on inflammatory weight. So like you eat a half muffin
and then you gain like 5 pounds.
Yeah, something like
se.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But it also goes in the other direction. So if you stop the pro-inflammatory lifestyle or the other influences or causes of inflammation, these people can also rapidly drop the inflammatory water weight. So it's what it's saying is it's not a chicken or egg. It's actually like you actually can meaningfully influence what direction up or down it's going. It's just the acceleration is different. If you've got more of these genes, you accelerate up faster, and you can also drop faster the inflammatory water weight.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I want to say about the inflammation bit from a big picture standpoint is that inflammation is imminently something that can be worked with because there's so many different inputs. Yeah. Things like even to the point like if you're very reactive to allergens, and then there's even in the food triggers, we're going to cover that in a later podcast. Yeah. If you reduce your exposure to allergens and you're at risk for reaction to allergens, it's a more risk for inflammation. So you can like reduce inflammation from multiple mechanisms. Yeah. Improving your sleep will improve inflammation because you actually release a lot of interleukin 10, the fire truck, when you sleep.
The body is so smart.
That's why why we sleep has been an ongoing fascination. Like, why are we vulnerable for 8 hours a day? We're dropping. There's many routes to dropping inflammation from the many causes of inflammation. So on the one hand, we're at the mercy of our modern lifestyle, exposing to so much information. Yeah. And on the other hand, that means that we've got a lot of things we can pick from to help reduce our inflammatory burden, whether it's reducing allergen exposure, normalizing our body weight, improving sleep, dropping stress, improving your diet to being a more anti-inflammatory, whether it's avoiding histamine-based foods, avoiding processed or junk foods, and all this 100 different ways to drop inflammation in your diet, to these other nutrigenomic tools we mentioned, like the over 2 grams worth of fish oil, etc. So inflammation is a big scary word and a big scary process, and has very significant implications, especially for the long term, for people that are worried about chronic illness. Yeah. I'm deeply concerned about it. I've got cancer, heart disease, stroke, and dementia on both sides of my family within 2 generations on each side. Yeah. And so when I'm looking at and talking about these interventions around your genetics, I am taking this deadly seriously, quite literally, for my own sake. Yeah. And the tools that the genetics can reveal is a different window from the tools you gain from other functional testing. I'm not saying that the functional testing is invaluable. It absolutely is, but I believe everyone should have their genetics tested as a foundation, because all the other stuff you're doing in your entire life is filtered through your unique genetic combination. And you must know your relationship to inflammation. Yeah. This is a requirement for anyone who's interested in long-term health and well-being and longevity.
Thank you. It's really powerful, and I'm excited for the next episodes to come to continue diving into this. So thank you for sharing, and we will catch you in the next one.
Hey, say bye, Lily.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Fitgenes podcast. If you're a practitioner or certified health coach or clinician, visit Fitgenesusa.com to confidently bring genetics into your practice and improve your clients' outcomes. If you're a health seeker or lifelong learner or biohacker, go to Fitgenesusa.com to find the nearest Fitgenes practitioner near you. If you got value from today's episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Every 5-star rating helps others find this show and unlock the power of their own genetic blueprint. Until next time, remember, genetics doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs the right blueprint.